Good morning, everyone. How are you feeling today? Welcome to the 6th Annual International Transport Innovation Forum. I believe this forum offers many exciting insights and experiences for all of you. The one I had just moments ago, it's exciting, riding in an autonomous vehicle for the first time. So, well, it was Such an interesting experience to go into the stage. It's great to see many participants here in person, and I would like to read those who are watching us online. Many others are also watching us live via Delfi. Each year, the Transport Innovation Forum continues to grow, attracting more international participants. This year, we are really proud to host representatives from 18 countries. As a result, this year's forum will be conducted in English. As always, the forum will feature presentations and discussions in both Lithuanian and English. For those who need translation, I invite you to download the Inovacijų app to listen to the forum sessions in the language of your choice. This year, we also invite you to download the Transport Innovation Forum app, which will make it easier for you to network with other participants and access the event program. This year's theme, Innovation for Resilience and Sustainability, reflects the evolving trends and challenges within the transport and logistics sectors. Over the course of 2 days, the forum will bring together distinguished leaders and innovators from across the industry to engage in meaningful discussions on policy, digitalization, sustainability, and breakthrough innovations. Tomorrow, we will also have the Green Mobility Awards and the startup pitch session on this stage, where we will explore some of the most exciting startup solutions in the transport and logistics fields. Now I would like to invite a very distinguished guest who has come to greet the forum's participants. Please welcome to the stage the Prime Minister of the Republic of Lithuania, Ingrida Šimonytė.
Dear organizers and guests, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all on this Transport Innovation Forum and to meet so many enthusiasm about innovation, sustainability and resilience. And now I will move to Lithuanian ir pratęsiu savo kalbą lietuvių kalba. Susisiekimo sektorius yra tarsi įvairovės ir skirtybių jungties voratinklis. Siųsdami laiškus, veždami krovinius, skambindami kolegoms, susitikdami su draugais, visuomet vienaip ar kitaip pasitelkiame susisiekimo infrastruktūros patogumus. Šios ekosistemos labai reikšminga dalimi, be jokios abejonės, yra transportas. Pažvelgus retrospektyviai, praėjęs 5 metis į transporto sektorių ir į transporto sektorių įtraukė žaliąją ir skaitmeninę darbotvarkės, naujus saugumo ir patogumo standartus, solidarumą su kovojančia už mūsų visų laisvę Ukraina, geresnės keliautojų ir susisiekimo sektoriaus darbuotojų sąlygas. O ateinantys 5 metai reikš naujus mobilumo bei prieinamumo kiekvienam žmogui ir verslui iššūkius, tvarumo reikalavimus, didesnę dirbtinio intelekto integraciją, laiko taupimo ir greičio normas. Dabar, kai nuolat skubame, laikas tampa esminiu efektyvumo rodikliu. Neišskirčiau nė vienos susisiekimo srities, nes ir gabenant krovinius laivu ir siunčiant laiškus paštu, nuolat pabrėžiamas būtent laiko veiksnys. Žinoma, efektyvumą lems taip pat ir atitiktis tvarumo reikalavimams, patogumas ir prieinamumas vartotojui. Baigiama formuoti nauja Europos komisija, prasideda naujas planavimo ir sprendimų priėmimo ciklas. Jau netrukus visos ES valstybės narės pradės diskusiją, kaip mūsų transporto sistemos vizija 2040 metams atitiks naujus klimato kaitos tikslus. Labiausiai tikėtina, kad pačios intensyviausios diskusijos vyks dėl įsipareigojimų aviacijos ir laivybos srityse, nes tai globalūs sektoriai. Ir čia vien nacionalinių ar vien ES lygmens sprendimų tikrai nepakaks. Bendrus sprendimus dėl emisijų mažinimo, inovacijų diegimo reikės priimti visų pasaulio regionų lyderiams. Tam reikės rasti balansą tarp veiksmingumo ir tokių proveržio variklių kaip skaitmeninimo ar klimato kaitos imperatyvai. Tik viską suderinus bus galima kalbėti apie išties tvarų transporto sistemos vystymąsi. Noriu išskirti dar vieną, bet labai svarbų, mums kone esminį dalyką. Tai saugumas ir atsparumas. Atsparus transporto sektorius yra nepamainoma ekonomikos dalis, o kaip dabar matome ir nepamainoma saugumo dalis. Mums būtina turėti efektyvius transporto koridorius integruotus į vakarų Europos susisiekimo sistemą. Tuo požiūriu Rail Baltica, Via Baltica yra mūsų kertiniai koridoriai. Jau netrukus užbaigsime vieną ilgiausių Via Baltica ruožų. Iš esmės perplanovome ir paspartinome Rail Baltica geležinkelio projektą, nuolat aptardami jo pažangą Baltijos valstybių vyriausybių lygmenių. 2021 metais pradėjo veikti Kauno intermodalinis terminalas, kuris yra toliausiai į rytus nutolęs Europinės vėžės logistikos centras. Kelių sektoriui pastaruosius keletą metų taip pat stengiamės skirti didžiulį dėmesį. Jau nebeturime tokių fenomenų, kokius turėjome anksčiau, kai metų pabaigoje vis į kitus metus keliaudavo kažkokie nepanaudotų lėšų likučiai. Dabar veikiau jau turime daugiau idėjų, negu kasmet turime lėšų. Tai tik keli esminiai Lietuvos transporto projektai. Rusijai pradėjus invaziją ir plataus masto karą Ukrainoje, Rail Baltica projektas tapo taip pat ir karinio mobilumo dėlionės dalimi ir prioritetu. Tai yra ir kritinės infrastruktūros apsaugos prioritetas, kur svarbi kibernetinė sauga, fizinė sauga turi išlikti ir tikiu, kad ES regiono ir nacionaliniuose saugumo planuose ir išliks. Kuo saugesnę infrastruktūrą turėsime, tuo saugesnę aplinką kursime investicijoms ir pramoniai, kuri būtent ir naudojasi susisiekimo sistema. Transporto sektorius nuolat kinta, diegdamas inovacijas. Šis sektorius neišvengiamai reaguoja į geopolitinius iššūkius ir pasaulio ekonomikos tendencijas. Natūralu, kad ne viskas vyksta taip, kaip suplanuota, neretai tenka kūrybiškai reaguoti į naujus sunkumus ar naujus iššūkius. Taigi vis labiau svarbus tampa tokie formatai kaip šis, kur galima diskutuoti, dalytis patirtimi ir idėjomis ir kartu ieškoti sprendimų. Tad linkiu visiems šio renginio dalyviams konstruktyvių diskusijų. Ačiū uždėmesį.
Thank you, Prime Minister. This event is organized by the Transport Innovation Association in collaboration with the Ministry of Transport and Communication. I now would like to invite here Marius Kuodis, the Minister of Transport and Communication of Republic of Lithuania, to give the welcome speech.
Labas rytas, good morning to everyone. Gerbiama premjerė, visi susirinkusieji. Tai yra ketvirtas kartas, kada organizuojant transporto inovacijų forumą, aš čia esu ant scenos. Ir vakar pagalvojau, kad jau pakankamai ilgai. Tai Jurgi, reikės sugalvoti kažkokių inovacijų. Per dažnai tas pats žmogus čia pasirodo ant scenos. Ir kadangi premjerė sudėliojo visus akcentus, noriu pasidalinti 3 pastebėjimais. Pirmas pastebėjimas yra susijęs su pokyčiais, kuriuos tos 4 ir daugiau metų galėjau matyti. Ir aš sakau, kad yra pasaulyje viena paroda, į kurią nuvažiavęs, kas 2 metus tu gali labai gerai pajusti tendencijas. Tai yra Frankfurto automobilių paroda, kuri vėliau buvo pervadinta į mobilumo parodą ir perkelta į Müncheną. Pamenu mano pirmąjį apsilankymą 2019 metais. 2019 metais kai kurie iš automobilių gamintojų pristatė pirmuosius elektromobilius. Pavyzdžiui, Volkswagenas tuomet pristatė visišką inovaciją Volkswagen ID3 pirmąjį modelį. Ir tai atrodė kažkas tokio, netgi ir prisipažinsiu, įlipus man pirmą kartą jį, pakeitė mano požiūrį į elektromobilius. Bet tuo metu aš girdėjau labai daug skepsio, kad elektromobiliai čia kažkas bus, bet vidaus degimo varikliai tai yra tai, kas yra mūsų privalumas ir mes juos turėsim. Kas atsitiko po kelerių metų? 21 metais, lankantis jau Müncheno automobilių parodoje, mobilumo parodoje, visi didieji Europos ir pasaulio gamintojai pristatinėjo elektromobilius ir tuomet jau buvo aišku. Gamintojai, bent jau kalbant apie elektromobilių, apie lengvųjų automobilių segmentą, pasakė, mūsų ateitis bus elektrinė. Po 2 metų, praėjus 2 metų laikotarpiui, ką mes matome kitoje parodoje, žinot ką? Kiniškus elektromobilius. Ir kinai kažkada prieš 5 metus nusprendė konkuruoti su Europos, Jungtinių Amerikos valstijų, kitų Azijos šalių gamintojais, negamindami vidaus degimo variklius, o pagamindami visiškai naują produktą. Ir su nauju produktu atėjo į rinką, kuriuo, mes dabar jaučiame pakankamai didelius sukrėtimus. Kokia išvada? Išvada akivaizdi, apie ką mes čia daug šnekėsim, kad jeigu šiandieną esi konkurencingas kažkurioje srityje, tai nereiškia, kad po kelerių metų būsi lygiai toks pats konkurencingas. Mes tą matome ir iš didžiųjų technologijų įmonių, kurios pagal rinkos kapitalizaciją prieš 5 metus dar tokios nebuvo. Ir nežinia, kas mūsų laukia ateityje. Tai yra pirmasis mano pastebėjimas. Antrasis pastebėjimas. Šiandieną, tiesą pasakius, naktį grįžau iš Ženevoje vykusio pasaulio ekonomikos forumo susitikimo apie Europos konkurencingumą. Diskusija ir diskusijos, kurios vyksta globaliu mastu su didžiausiais pasaulio verslais, yra apie tai, kad pokyčių tempas nelėtėja, o tik tai greitėja. Ir šiandieną mes čia tikrai kalbėsime apie tokius klausimus kaip alternatyvius degalus. Iš ko turėtų būti pagaminta elektra? Mes kalbėsime apie vandenilį ir įvairiausius derivatyvus iš vandenilio. Aš net nebejoju, bus diskusijų apie metaną, apie biodujas, kaip tarpinį, pereinamąjį kurą, bet čia yra tik tai viena iš sričių. Dirbtinis intelektas yra tema, apie kurią diskutuojama labai daug. Kvantiniai kompiuteriai. Atrodo kažkas iš kosmoso srities, bet jie jau yra čia ir dabar. Kosmoso technologijos. Ir kai kas juokauja, kosmosas čia yra kažkur toli. Ne, kosmosas yra apie viską, kas yra ant Žemės ir apie tas paslaugas, kurias turime čia visi savo mobiliuosiuose telefonuose. Aš jau nekalbu apie daiktų internetą, apie 5G technologijos, kurios dar tik tai prasideda. Mes dar jas tik tai pradedame naudoti. Mes turime technologijas, bet dar pakankamai mažą paklausą tiek Lietuvoje, tiek kitose šalyse. Ir pokyčių tempas yra toks didelis, kad labai tikėtina, kad laimėtojas, tas, kuris sukurs naują produktą, pasims viską. Pokyčių tempas yra toks didelis, kad šiandieną greitieji valgo mažesniuosius, ne tik mažesniuosius, bet ir lėtesnius. Ir nėra svarbus tavo dydis. Ne didesnis suvalgys mažesnį, o greitesnis suvalgys lėtesnį. Na ir lygiai taip pat mes turime ir kitus iššūkius. Su to pokyčių tempu nelabai paskui suspėja ir mūsų visuomenės, pripažinkim. Ir čia galėčiau pajokauti, jeigu norite to įrodymų, tai užtenka pasiklausyti kai kurių politinių debatų vykstančių. Na ir visame šitame kontekste tikrai yra labai daug diskusijų apie Europos konkurencingumą. Ir jau yra toksai standartas praktiškai visą laiką pasiskųsti, kad Europa pagal vieną ar kitą rodiklį kažkur atsilieka. Pagal produktyvumą atsiliekam nuo Jungtinių Amerikos valstijų, pagal kitus rodiklius. Labai įprasta sakyti, kad Europoje mes neturime pakankamai tokių didelių kompanijų, nacionalinių ar Europos lygmens čempionų, kurie dominuotų pasaulyje. Ir žinot ką? Klausydamas tų diskusijų ir pagalvodamas apie Lietuvos transporto ir susisiekimo sektorių, aš matau visiškai priešingas tendencijas. Mes turime Europos lygio kompanijas, Europos čempionus transporto ir susisiekimo srityje. Tos kompanijos jau dabar diegia dirbtiniu intelektu paremtus sprendimus, paskirstydami, iš kur paimti krovinį ir nuvežti į kitą vietą. Jos juos kuria. Tai yra tos kompanijos, kurios kuria paklausą inovacijoms. Mes čia turime kai kurias iš įmonių prisistatinėjančių, jeigu mūsų viena kompanija gali nusipirkti vienu mostu 600 elektrinių vilkikų, tai yra paklausa. Ir tai yra didelė paklausa Europos mastu. Tai aš čia tikrai noriu pasidžiaugti, palinkėti, nepasiduoti tam pesimizmui, nes mes turime labai daug ir tokiu būdu didiname Europos konkurencingumą. Na, o čia noriu palinkėti visiems diskutuojant, nelikim tik transporto srityje. Šiandieną negalime turėti tokios privilegijos. Transportas yra tiesiogiai susijęs su energetika. Taip, galbūt šiandieną elektromobiliai yra per brangus, bet jeigu mes į elektromobilį pradėsim žiūrėti kaip į energijos kaupimo įrenginį, galbūt mūsų požiūris pasikeis. Taigi, siūlau atsisakyti tos fragmentacijos ir pažiūrėti kuo plačiau. Ir mano pats paskutinis pastebėjimas, kurį labai irgi pabrėžė premjerė. Šiandieną šių metų forumo tema yra susijusi su atsparumu. Ir turbūt tenka pripažinti, kad šiandieną karai, jau nekalbant apie žiaurų karą Ukrainoje, bet ir apie kitus konfliktus pasaulyje, dėja tampa nauja realybė. Ir ką tai sako? Kad mums visiems reikia būti tik tai atsparesniems. Ir tiesą pasakius, jau pakankamai seniai NATO, kalbėdami apie atsparumą, išskyrė 7 principus. 7 iš 7 principų, daugiau nei pusė yra susiję su susisiekimu ir telekomunikacijomis. Tai yra mūsų sritimi. Ne veltui vyriausybėje pakankamai neseniai atsirado krizių valdymo centras, kuris, patikėkit, veikia kiekvieną dieną. Ne veltui mūsų ministerijoje mes įkūrėme atskirą padalinį atsakingą už atsparumą ir reagavimą į krizes. Nes tiesiog tai yra sritis, kurios užima vis daugiau ir daugiau laiko. Ne veltui vyriausybėje didžiausią dėmesį, kalbant apie susisiekimo sektorių, skyrėme per pastaruosius metus kariniam mobilumui. Via Baltica, kuri tuoj pat bus pabaigta ir kitais metais turėsime vientisą automagistralę nuo Vilniaus, Kauno iki pat Varšuvos, ir apie karinį atsparumą. Dėmesys tiltams, viadukams yra apie atsparumą. Ir taip toliau ir panašiai. Ir aš jau nekalbėsiu, kas bus, jeigu mes neinvestuosime į kibernetinį saugumą. Turbūt visi iš savo patirties savo įmonėse žinot. Na ir lygiai taip pat, noriu palinkėti dar ir lygiai taip pat kalbant apie energetiką, apie alternatyvus degalus, irgi neužsiciklinkime tik ties viena technologija. Man yra labai įstrigęs pokalbis su Singapūro kolega, Singapūro susisiekimo ministru, kurio aš klausiau, tai ar pas jūs važinės tik elektromobiliai? Jie sako, ne, jokių būdų, ne daugiau negu 50%. Sakau, kodėl? Todėl, kad mes importuojame elektros energiją, mes jos patys niekada nepasigaminsime pakankamai ir mums visą laiką reikia turėti alternatyvą. Žalią, švalią alternatyvą. Tai aš labai tikiuosi, kad ir šitose diskusijose mes kalbėsime apie įvairias alternatyvas. Visame šitame kontekste yra be galo svarbi viešojo ir privataus sektoriaus partnerystė, bendradarbiavimas, ką pabrėžė daugelis žmonių, ką pabrėžė premjerė. Tai labai noriu padėkoti Inovacijų asociacijai, kad mes turime šį gražų renginį ir tai yra būtent to bendradarbiavimo pavyzdys. Visiems gerų diskusijų, naujų idėjų, naujų partnerysčių. Na ir nekantrauju šias 2 dienas tikrai su daugeliu pabendrauti ir tiesiogiai. Ačiū, gero renginio.
Thank you, Minister. And now I would like to invite to the stage the initiator of this forum, the chairman of the board of Transport Innovation Association, Jurgis Adomavičius.
Ačiū, Gabrielė. Thank you. Gerbiama premjerministrė, ministrai, svečiai, pranešėjai, partneriai šito renginio, be jūsų jisai toksai nebūtų geras ir gražus. Aš, kai išgirdau premjerministrę ant šitos scenos, galvojau, jau man nebus ką sakyti, bet paskui, kai išėjo ministras, praktiškai visai išnaudojo mano visą kalbą. Aš labai dėl to džiaugiuosi, nes vis tik tai pagaliau mes pasiekėm tą, kad verslas ir valdančioji valstybės politika labai artima ir labai panašiai galvoja. Bet be abejo, kad mes negalim nekalbėti, ypač kai turim tokį nestabilumą. Ir tas nestabilumas be abejo yra susijęs su užsitęsusiu karu, nelabai aiškia ir iki galo nesuformuota Europos pačia politika. Be abejo, kad mes labai pergyvenam ir nedrąsiai žvelgiam su dabartiniais ekonomikos rodiklių prognozėmis. Tai man atrodo, kad atėjo laikas veikti mums visiems drąsiai. Ir šitas forumas bus apie tai. Nežinot, kas veikia anksčiau, gali būti, kad nebeveiks rytoj. Ir apie tai kalbėjo prieš mane šito forumo partneriai ir premjerministrė. Man atrodo, kad Lietuva gali tapti šitų inovacijų centru. Ir mes tikrai sugebėsim ir tikrai padarysim, kad šitą galimybę pilnai išnaudotumėm mūsų konkurencinio pranašumo didinimą. Kaip ir kalbėjo ministras, dabar gali padaryti tai greitieji. Ir man atrodo, kad mes Lietuvoje, turėdami šitokią didelę transporto ir logistikos patirtį, galime būti patys greičiausi, kurie išnaudosim šitas visas galimybės, kurios yra susijusios su inovacijom. Nebereikalo mūsų asociacija ir šitas forumas kalba apie tas inovacijas, kurios, man atrodo, ypač žaliojo kurso kontekste labai gali mums pasinaudoti. Mes suprantam visi, kad tai yra didelės investicijos ir sudėtingas perėjimas prie to žaliojo kurso įgyvendinimo. Tačiau čia ir atrodo, kad atsirado proga mums išmaniems, greitiems, gal ir mažiems pasinaudoti šitą galimybę. Mūsų sektorius tikrai labai svarbią dalį užima mūsų ekonomikoje. Tai aš norėčiau, kad mes išnaudotumėm šitą galimybę ir mes gražintumėm ne tik tai, kad išgyventumėm, bet ir gražintumėm tas senas mūsų pozicijas, kada mes darėm svarbę ir labai įtakingą poziciją mūsų valstybės politikoje. Tai dar kartą tik tai patvirtina iš ES praeitą savaitę atėjusios naujienos. Tai dar kartą pasako, kad Europa girdi ir supranta mus. Tai man tik tai norisi pasakyti, kad reikia kartu veikti valdžia, verslas, mokslas. Ir mes iš tikrųjų galim sukurti puikią ekosistemą, kuri turėtų pasitarnauti naujų darbo vietų sukūrimui, BVP didinimui ir be abejo, kaip čia ir minėjo prieš tai kalbėję žmonės, kad mes turėtumėm galvoti apie tvarumą, apie būtent tą, kaip sakant, nepažeidžiamumą ir sugalvoti daug ir išmanių technologijų, kurios skaitmenizuotų mūsų transporto ir logistikos sektorių, inovuotų jį. Ta tik tai patvirtina, ką tik čia pravažiavęs savavaldis autobusas, kuris ne tik tai nenaudoja žmogiškojo papildomo resurso to vairuotojo, kaip mes čia visada kalbam, bet jisai dar yra ir ekologiškas. Tai aš labai visus kviečiu šiandien aktyviai dalyvauti, dalinti savo idėjomis. Imkite tas mintis ir įgyvendinkit. Aš tikrai tikiu, kad mes kuriam inovatyvę, atsparę ir gerą ekonomiką. Transporto ir logistikos sektorius yra svarbus. Tai ačiū ir tikrai šiandien diskutuokim daug ir galingai, kad tie maži būtų greitesni ir suvalgytų didžiuosius. Ačiū.
Thank you, Jurgis. Today we have the pleasure of receiving greetings not only here for the stage, but also through a special video message from Young Tae Kim. Young Tae Kim is the Secretary General of the International Transport Forum, the ITF. The ITF serves as a platform for ministers and transport leaders to discuss the challenges and opportunities in the transport sector with a focus on sustainability, innovation, and inclusive mobility. So please take a look at the screen.
Honorable Ministers, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege for me to join and contribute to this important event. I was honored to participate in the Transport Innovation Forum in 2021, and although I'm participating virtually today, my return here underscores the strong and continuous cooperation with Lithuania. I would like to express my special appreciation to Marius and his dedicated team at the Ministry of Transport for their continued efforts and commitment. In addition, as members of the transport community, you may be aware that Lithuania successfully held the presidency of the International Transport Forum last year, following its role as vice president. Looking ahead, with Forum's 2024 lead theme of resilience being discussed from various perspectives, I would like to highlight some key areas that will be critical in the coming years. The priority would be to overcome and adjust to the effects of global pandemics, geopolitical conflicts, and supply chain disruptions. The focus should be on building strategies that are resilient, agile, and digitally transformative. Key areas to consider also include transport and logistic network should be made more resilient to future shocks by diversifying supply sources and logistics route to avoid over-reliance on a single point of failure. Adoption of digital technologies in connectivity, transport, and logistics to increase efficiency, transparency, and adaptability. Indeed, Internet of Things, blockchain, and AI may play a pivotal role. Rather than relying on long and complex global supply chains, businesses should create an interactive and open platform for discussing the critical transport policy issues over our time. I encourage you to follow the latest work streams and insights from ITF. And I would also like to reiterate my gratitude for the opportunity to be here today. And I look forward to our continued collaboration as we shape the future of transport and logistics together.
And now we're saying a big thank you for a Prime Minister. Due to her busy schedule, she has to leave, but we are really thankful for her time. So let's make a round of applause. Thank you, Prime Minister. Before we begin today's keynote presentations, I would like to remind you that this event is organized by the Transport Innovation Association and the Ministry of Transport and Communications of the Republic of Lithuania. I would also like to thank the sponsor of this event, without whom it would not be possible. Special thanks goes to Platinum Partners, EIT, Urban Mobility, and Lithuanian Railways. Let's make a round of applause for our Platinum Partners. Our gold partners, Scania, DKV Mobility, Shell, VTG Group, Gurtam Schmitz Cargo Bull. And additionally, we would like to thank Innovation Agency, EU for EFTI, Neste, TGS Baltic, Sygic, and all the other forum partners. Thank you. And now, for the first keynote presentation, we invite a special guest, Torsten Klimke, head of the Innovation and Research Unit at the European Commission's Director General for Mobility and Transport, where he is responsible for the EU's transport research and innovation strategy, urban mobility, and support programs. Let's welcome him on the stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have to admit, to my shame, it's my first time in Vilnius, not my last time, I'm for sure. And what I do, because I have a team who's in charge of urban mobility, I like to try out public transport whenever I get to a new place. And I have to say, is there anyone here from the public transport administration or operations in Vilnius? Anyone? Difficult to see from here, so your hands, but I would like to congratulate them, because I have to say, in my personal experience, the app, the Trafi app, is easily the best one I've seen so far. I mean, it's fantastic to get really from place to place, from location to location. So I can only recommend, if you haven't tried it out, to try this app. But I'm not here to talk about public transport, or not only public transport, but rather about where we are and where we are going. And I have to start with a disclaimer, and you heard it from the Prime Minister and from the Minister as well, that currently the Commission, we don't yet have a confirmed Commission. I don't have a confirmed Commissioner. The hearings are scheduled for early November, so afterwards we know for sure. So what I'm going to tell you at the same time, I would like to show you a little bit where we are at the moment, but please don't forget to check back in early and the middle of November to see what actually are then the confirmed portfolios, what are the confirmed tasks for the new Commission. How do I slip this slide? Would you mind putting on the next slide, please? Or maybe I have a beeper here. I don't have. Thank you very much. So, in general, this is our sustainable and smart mobility strategy, the basis of what we're doing in transport. I'm sure many of you have seen it, and I don't want to go too much into detail, but just to show the different elements that, of course, thank you very much, that's very kind. The different elements and the different aspects that you already heard about from the Prime Minister and the Minister as well. Sustainable, smart and resilient. And under resilient, I also, and you can see it here, count, of course, competitive. Resilient competitiveness. Something quite recent you might be aware of, but I'd like to spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes on this nevertheless. The TEN-T network. You see the corridors, you're probably familiar with the corridors, but maybe you're wondering about the dots there. If you're not wondering about the dots anymore, that's great, but maybe some of you are wondering about the dots, because what we actually have now is we have the new concept, or the reinforced concept of urban nodes. You see the 9 transport corridors there, but you see the dots, and there are 431. Not on this slide, I'm sure, but if you check them in the legislation and in the overall framework, you will find 431 in there. Because, of course, it's not only the corridors, and no one really intends to transport and stay on the corridor. It's these urban nodes that are very important. And you see the different timelines that we have for this. The overall transport network, the 9 corridors, but also the core network and the comprehensive network, and the dots, of course. What about the dots? And this is new. The dots, the urban nodes, they're not cities. They're the functional areas of the most important, the largest, the most important for transport urban areas in the EU, 431. We want to connect them better to the network. Not only look into the operations within the node, but integrate them into the network. And you see the requirements here for multimodal passenger mobility and multimodal freight hubs to have for each of these 431 freight, at least one multimodal freight terminal, freight hub, and at least one passenger hub to integrate them well into the network. Part of this then is, of course, to connect the network and what happens on the network to the urban nodes and to logistics within the urban area. So an important new element, not only of the TEN-T, but also of our urban mobility framework, is to look into zero-emission city freight logistics. It's something that maybe we didn't pay enough attention to in the past. We were looking very much on passenger transport. We were looking very much on mobility, and rightly so. And there's a lot left to be done in this area. But we also need to look, and we are looking at the freight logistic area and the last mile delivery. And what can we do? What can we do on European level, but also what can be done on local levels, on national levels. So we have a specific expert group that looks into mobility aspects and how to actually organize, how to improve the overall conditions in there. Military mobility. We already heard the Prime Minister speaking about it, the Minister speaking about it. Military mobility, we realize that this is important, is more important, has become unfortunately more of the focus than it has been in the past. So what are we doing to support the dual use or the military mobility as such? You might have seen the action plan on military mobility that already is out for a couple of months, for about a year, a bit more than a year. But also support. There's support available. There has been support available for military mobility. Support available to improve the infrastructure. We had a call, the last call in May 2023, a specific one, 4.7 times oversubscribed. So we see how important it is and how much demand there is. The EIB, in the meantime, has also set up support facility, a support possibility to help with investments. The TEN-T regulation that I was referring to before strengthens in particular also the resilience of the network, preparedness, military mobility aspects. So all of these aspects are also integrated, not only the nodes, but also the military, the dual use. We are preparing for a study to look more into detail of what large-scale military movements, what requirements we need, what requirements, how ready we are, what we need to do still. So what we need to operate the military mobility on the network. The current and last, most recent CEF call, which is actually still open, 2.5 billion, substantial support available through this one, isn't a specific one on military mobility, but it is one where military mobility can be an important element, and in particular when the evaluations will take place, we will pay attention to any possible military mobility corridors, military mobility aspects. So not a specific call for military mobility, but if you're maybe in the preparation, if you're involved in such projects, indeed the links to military mobility will be an important element in the evaluations. So that was where we are now, the framework that we have, the very new framework. And we heard about innovation in general, and you're here to talk about innovation and many important elements, from digital to fuels, to resilience, to competitiveness, to industrial competitiveness. All of these are very important elements. The TEN-T and other regulation and legislation helps with setting framework conditions for deployment. But indeed, looking into the future and what comes next and what will be the focus in the future. You might have seen the Draghi report. The Draghi report isn't specific on transport, but it also talks about transport. So you'll find transport in several of these elements in there. And you can probably subscribe to most of the points that you see here and that are mentioned in there. So it talks about sustainable and green transport, low emission and zero emission vehicles, renewable energy that we need, innovation, digitalization, smart management, traffic management systems, autonomous vehicles, safety across our network. We still have far too many road deaths, in particular in the EU. Infrastructure modernization, so connectivity, and investment and funding, of course. So this is what Draghi in his report is saying is important about transport. And I would like to show you as well, and here really, you see also the disclaimer down there, so please do check back. Do check back after the hearings. Maybe for those who are not so familiar with the European Commission and how the process works, our president, who's already confirmed, President von der Leyen, has nominated European commissioners, commissioners designate. These commissioners now will have a hearing. Each of them will have a hearing in European Parliament, and then Parliament will have a vote afterwards, and there will be information finally from the European Council. So what I'm showing here is really kind of the starting point. It's not the end point. So please do check back after the hearings and to see what then finally really the specific mission is. Also there might be some reallocations between portfolios, between commissioners and also between commission departments. But I wouldn't like to miss the opportunity to share with you a little bit what actually is the current thinking or the starting of this process. So you see in this mission letter for the future transport commissioner, the 10T corridors. That is not a surprise, and to complete them, so to keep up and intensify the work. The build-up of charging infrastructure, the simplification of charging fees and payments. Also, this is not something new. It's not something I think that will surprise people, but it's important and it's good to see that there's a focus still on this. And this is important because we have work left to do, all of us. Actions on making progress on the single European sky, aviation, an important element for aviation. Implement the European Declaration on cycling. Maybe some of you have seen this declaration. So we had for the first time ever, now we have a European Declaration on cycling, 36 actions to support cycling, but also to integrate it into urban mobility and beyond, also to integrate it into tourism, and not last but not least, also an important industrial element, because manufacturing and maintenance of bikes, in particular electric bikes, is a growing and an important industrial sector. Strengthen the social dimension of mobility, and that ranges from jobs in the sector, skill shortage, labor shortage, but also into transport poverty and rural mobility. So how can we support those who in particular suffer from the changes that we have from the innovation, or who don't even yet and today have access to good mobility? So an important element, not to focus only on urban mobility, but also on the rural and remote areas. And also focus on those who need support, who don't have access to mobility solutions at the moment. Digitalization, an important element, and it will continue to be an important element in different sectors, from road to rail and multimodal. Security and military mobility remain very high on the agenda, remain very important, and international connections and leading role in international organizations. And that's the second part. And here are some elements that maybe are kind of new nuances, are new focus areas. And again, I say you see this, you see the asterisks there. Please check back when the commissioners are confirmed, and it's also important. We also will check back, of course, what will be our political guidance on this. But I wanted to show and share with you the starting point. So to have a stronger single market for transport services in the EU. Promote a resilient and competitive tourism sector, a sector that is getting also more important for transport. We see how more and more of the transport needs are also for tourism, whether it's long distance or short distance urban mobility. High-speed rail and ambitious network, put more emphasis on this high-speed rail network and to complete it. A proposal for a single digital booking and ticketing regulation. Those of you who have been involved in this or have looked at it or worked on it know that this is quite a complex and quite a challenging file, but you see that there is willingness and there's the need, I think we all agree, to make progress on this. Sustainable transport investment plan. And here, of course, I need to see myself as well, what will it look like on the political level? So how will the structure look in the future on investment? But you see here that the willingness to, from our side, to go towards kind of a more ambitious but also more integrated investment plan. Clean corporate fleets, so how can we make more progress in this area? Industrial support plan or industrial strategies, support strategies for automotive and maritime sectors, very important industrial sectors. How can we stay at the forefront? How can we keep the innovation? How can we remain being the most innovative on a global level? A strategy for promotion of cutting-edge technologies in transport. How can we be the first ones on the market with new technologies, with new solutions? Because ultimately it's about solutions. And last but not least, an important entry point and exit point for imports, exports, the EU ports. So a comprehensive EU port strategy. So this is a bit of a glimpse into the future. See you again in November. Follow maybe, I will follow. I'm sure some of you will follow as well what happens with the hearings in Parliament. And hopefully by December, the latest in January, we will know. We will know for sure. We will have the exact mission then for the future Transport Commissioner. Until then, I thank you very much for your attention. It's a pleasure to be here to speak to you, to speak with you, to listen to you. And I'm looking forward to very interesting and very innovative discussions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Torsten. It is a pleasure to have you here with us today. I would like now to welcome another distinguished guest for our Transport Innovation Forum here on stage. Marion Jansen is the director of the Trade and Agriculture Directorate at Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Before joining the OECD, Marion was chief economist at the International Trade Center in Geneva. Prior to this, she held senior research positions in the World Trade Organization. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Marion Jansen. Hello,
Good morning. A big pleasure for me to be here. Also for me, the first time in Vilnius and the first time in Lithuania. I have been asked to speak to you about global trade trends and the future of transport and logistics. Now, I am not a transport and logistics expert, so I'm above all here to explain to you why we at the OECD, and in particular in my directorate, are more and more interested in what you are doing. My name is Marion Jansen. I'm the director of the Trade and Agriculture Directorate at the OECD. For those of you who do not know the OECD, we are an international organization with 38 members. We are based in Paris, and our 38 members consider themselves to be like-minded countries. It's not always entirely clear what like-minded means, but it definitely means that all our members are democracies, all our members have market-led economies and believe in open markets, and that's important for what I'm going to discuss. We are based in Paris, as I said, and we host at our premises also the International Transport Forum, so if you visit Paris to come to the ITF, make sure you knock at my door and also speak to me. Now, what has been happening in trade trends in the last years? I see a lot of people in this room that are younger than I am. Maybe you find it normal to see a lot of change, to be exposed to shocks. I have in 25 years of careers never seen the level of frequency of shocks and the level of depth of shocks as I've been seeing and have been witnessing in the past years. And this has definitely had a huge impact on my job, and I wouldn't be surprised if it has an important impact on the job that you are doing in the logistics and transport sector. Have a look at this slide. I invite you to look at the left side above all. Here you see the kind of swings we have been witnessing as a result of COVID in recent years. Huge drop in international trade in 2020, huge pickup again in 2021. The travel services, for instance, collapsed completely. A lot of trade got stopped, but also we saw a total change in structure of trade with everything related to tourism, transport, for instance, anything related to planes, train systems not being traded anymore, many things related to making things cozy in your home being traded more. We saw also huge shifts in where did production pick up first, from where goods traveled, with China starting to produce earlier after the COVID crisis, starting to send stuff, notably to the United States. The US was consuming but was not producing, so containers were going full from China to the United States and had to come empty back, leading to major disruptions in your way of functioning. We expect trade to continue to grow in 24, 25 again. 23 has been a very weak year for international trade, but overall we are not very optimistic about how vivid and how dynamic the international trade landscape will be. What you see here are moderate growth figures. They reflect above all that we consider that there will be a lot of uncertainty in international markets. Some uncertainty comes from the fact that policymakers are talking about things like nearshoring, reshoring, reflecting that there is a concern about supply chains having been too long, things being produced too far away, and therefore there is this exposure to shocks making our economies vulnerable because it makes it more difficult to access things when we need them. So is there a trend therefore to start to produce closer to home or maybe at home? That's the kind of thing we analyze with these data at the OECD. These data show not trade, how much flows across borders, but they show which percentage of what we produce in a country requires imports. So this tells you something about the importance of supply chains. If I use a lot of imports, that means in order to produce my car in Germany, I'm German, in order to produce a Volkswagen, I need a lot of imports from somewhere else. So supply chains are important. What we see here is an important growth of supply chain trade in the 90s, in the early 2000s, and then whoop, great financial crisis happened. This was the first very important shock, where there was also a tsunami just before in Japan, but that shock really created a lot of, changed a bit the trust we had in the international trading system. In particular, led to a situation where China started to import less. So we see here a stabilization of supply chain trade. Not sure, these are predicted data from different data sets. What is going to happen in the future? We do not see a collapse of supply chain trade so far. Some experts expect supply chain trade will pick up great times. Also here, we want to emphasize above all that there's going to be uncertainty and change. Trade will continue to happen. I mentioned to you I'm responsible for agriculture. Trade will continue to take place, notably because for one of the most important things that we care about, being able to eat, this world will continue to need international trade. What we are seeing, have been seeing here, is steady evolution with certain regions of the world, notably Latin America, Brazil here, green, also Northern America, producing more food, more agricultural stuff than it is consuming, so strengthening its net export position with other parts of the world, there where the populations are growing, developed East Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, starting to produce more and more, but the production is not keeping up with population growth, so net imports are increasing. So in order to feed the world, and that's definitely an important global objective, trade will continue to be necessary, and therefore notably bulk type of trade, and we expect the direction of trade from the Americas towards the African and Asian region. So here, not a lot of shocks. Agriculture trade has gone through shocks, but a steady evolution. But we are seeing some bigger changes in other fields, notably in industrial trade, where we have seen tensions growing between the United States and China, notably the United States, you have heard about this, introducing tariffs on Chinese imports. And we have indeed seen that the imports, US imports from China have been decreasing until COVID, went up again and are decreasing again, and we are seeing the United States importing more and more from Mexico and Canada. So a bit of a nearshoring picture here for the United States. Modest, but a bit. More trading, more trade with already close partners, Mexico and Canada, and less with China. We do not see the same thing in Europe. Maybe it's starting, but Europe has continued to trade a lot with Asia, a lot increasingly with China. Look at this. And maybe it's changing now, but we have not seen yet this clear change that we are starting to see in the United States. We are not seeing it yet in the European Union. It is a space to watch. You have heard maybe in the press this new term, connector countries. Maybe what we are seeing is less direct imports from China to the United States, but that doesn't mean that there is less stuff produced in China being consumed in the United States. Maybe it just means that trade is deviated, for instance, through Mexico or through Vietnam, through Indonesia, for instance. What this here shows is how the imports of Mexico from China have increased and how the export of Mexico to the United States have increased. Same thing for Vietnam. Important increase of imports from China and exports to the United States. So a certain evidence of connector countries being active. This is the other way around. We see this a bit less big. These bulbs with Indonesia playing a more important role. Important place to watch is Indonesia, is one of these potential connector countries. What we are seeing, however, is that the EU and the United States have reduced their foreign direct investment in Indonesia, whereas China has increased it. So, yes, a bit of nearshoring, maybe a bit of redirection. This would affect logistics and transports because you will have to travel through the connector countries in order to get to the United States. So I've mentioned we have witnessed these shocks like the COVID crisis. We are seeing geopolitics playing out in trade patterns. Another space that you have probably also been watching, that we are increasingly watching, is what is happening in important choke points, in particular in the maritime space. And the maritime space has been affected by, at the same time, by different types of shocks. You are all aware of the drought in the Panama Canal, so there's less possibility of travel there. We see these important choke points in the Asian region, region and anything related for traffic between Asia and the European Union. Important choke points here, and you are aware of military activity in the Black Sea region and also instability in the Red Sea region. So this is something that is very much affecting trade between Asia and the European Union. One thing we are seeing is that this is leading to changes in the modes of transport. For certain types of products, it is possible to deviate from maritime transport to rail transport between China and Europe. Thanks to the Belt and Road, we have seen the rail network being expanding, so it is possible to travel via land from China to the European Union. For certain products, it is important to change from maritime to rail. You may know better than I know that it's also possible for certain products to go to air. And when I heard in Abu Dhabi recently that Emirates is starting to, has also been active in sending tires from Asia via the Middle East to Europe. Tires is not the kind of thing I would expect to be transported via a plane, but this has been happening in recent years. We see that there's a very radical thinking happening when it comes to changes in the mode of transport, very much in reaction to what is happening in the world around us. Now, I mentioned big changes in how much we trade, what we trade. We have seen geopolitics affecting what is happening in trade. The climate change is affecting what is happening in trade. But we also see new types of regulations, notably in the European region, that are affecting what kind of paperwork you will have to be showing at the border, what kind of traceability you will have to guarantee. And here I'm thinking notably of environmental type of regulations, also regulations related to social sustainability. Does your product contain forced labor? How are you going to prove this at the border? What is the kind of information you will have to provide? There is a sense that there is an increased need for information at the border, for new types of information, and that this will also require increased collaboration among different types of agencies. Why am I saying this? We are used, for instance, for anybody who transports foodstuff, that you have to prove at the border that the food you transport is safe. We know, because this has been going on for decades, which agency has to provide you with a certificate of food safety. Well, it's less clear, it's not clear at all, which agency has to provide you with a certificate of the carbon footprint of the good that you are transporting. So we are watching, and this is an area where we are very active. This is called trade facilitation. We are helping the WTO to monitor how easy it is to get things through the border. And this term that is used here for the ease of border processes is the term trade facilitation. And we are, as you see here, the Baltic economies are very strong when it comes to trade facilitation. Other regions are weaker, but we expect above all that a lot of innovation needs to happen at the border in order to be able to deal with the requirements that we are currently expecting from international trade. And as some of you are having to bring things through the border, we would be very much interested in learning more. You see what is happening at borders, what the new requirements will be, and how rapidly we will have to ensure that change happens in border procedures. This was my last figure. I have explained to you, I've shown you how big the changes have been in recent years in international trade. You have heard already from previous speaker what this means for your job. There's a requirement for more agility, of making sure that trade remains resilient. The changes come from all kinds of sides. The changes come from geopolitics, from trying to change the competitive position of countries, so through political changes, through climate change. They have come from pandemics, and what is expected from you and from us is to help our policymakers to make things continue to function at the border. When I started my career 25 years ago, I was told at the World Trade Organization, infrastructure, don't bother, transport, don't bother, that functions. We only look at policy making in the area of trade. Things have changed dramatically. Infrastructure matters, transport matters, what you are doing matters enormously. So when you come to Paris, come and see me and let's talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Our next speaker is a well-known figure in Lithuania, the Secretary General of the International Road Transport Union, Mr. Umberto Di Preto. Umberto has been the Secretary General of the IRU since 2013. He first joined IRU in 1995 and has held several key roles, including Head of Strategy and Deputy Secretary General. He now leads in driving innovation and preparing the road transport industry for future challenges and opportunities. Please welcome Umberto Di Preto.
Thank you very much. And with that introduction, you'll understand why it is that the organizers invited some guy who brings paper up on the stage for an innovation conference. It's because I'm old. I mean, it's simple as that. When I started at the RU 1995, a long time ago, I actually joined the RU, I think it was the International Rugby Union, but it wasn't. It was the International Road Transport Union. We were actually created, for those of you, I said that I'm well known, but there might be some of you that don't know who we are. We were created in 1948 to bring together the road transport industry from around the world, but we had a very humble beginning with only 8 countries, and today we're represented in over 100 countries with great activity. I'm very happy to be in Lithuania for many reasons. One, because of Marion Jansen. He's one of our great partners in our Brussels office, dealing with all the EU legislation, but also at global level at the ITF, as was mentioned by Young-Tae Kim, as the president of the ITF in the last mandate, to tackle global issues. You're blessed in this country. You're blessed to have a minister that understands economics. I can't say that of all the countries in the world. And when you understand economics, you start understanding transport and the importance of transport. You've always been here in Lithuania, crossroads historically, and really leaders in so many ways in transport. But I'll show you that I'm going to give a touch of realism to the challenges we're facing in creating resilience in our industry. The first thing is really understanding transport, and I would make a challenge to all of you. Think, and you can intercept me in the coffee area and in the exhibit area. Think of something at home or at your office that has not been on a truck and its production, distribution, anything. You think of it, write it down, and come see me, and I'll tell you why you're wrong if you can actually think of something. Everything at some point goes on a truck, and that's why, in terms of resilience, it's not just a matter of our industry, it's a matter of the economy, and understanding that we must remain resilient for society to continue to function. The image you see here talks about a week without transport. Well, I can tell you, the shelves will already be empty by day 3. If we were to actually go 1 week without transport, the economy would take 3 years to recover. So this is something we don't want to get to. In terms of resilience itself, what is it? It's a question of looking at how do we cope with change? But not only cope with change, how do we then adapt? But more importantly, how do we learn from these changes? I can almost guarantee you the next pandemic that we will have, we will forget what we did this time. And why? Because they happen every 100 or so years. And then, the people say, well, what did we do at that time that was right? What did we do that was wrong? The reaction will be a knee-jerk reaction, close the borders, everything shuts down, and everybody starts wearing masks. Okay, I understand that. And I understand that for the first few weeks. But when we get into 1 year, 2 years where everything is shut down, then we know that there's a problem and somebody didn't look at the guidebook as to what do we do during the pandemic. So hopefully we will learn. I'm going to touch on a few issues, what we consider the challenges in our industry, and we call them the 3D challenges, so decarbonization, driver shortage, and digitalization. And each of them, how will that actually impact our ability to be resilient? But much of this is based on what we've just seen and what we've experienced. Last year we celebrated our 75th anniversary, and looking backwards over 75 years, he said, what were we really good at as a road transport industry? And going forward, what should we be committing to? And what we saw is that in all crises, whether it was the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and I must admit, this is probably one of the moments that I was most proud to be Secretary General of the RU. The first ones that got to the border were our bus and coach companies that said, how do we help people leave? And also our trucks going in and saying, how do we bring food and other supplies into the Ukraine to help? And this was not for money, this was out of the goodness of their hearts saying, how do we help? And in fact, when we look at the earthquakes that are going on, just the hurricanes now going in the United States, the first ones to go in and help are the road transport companies that go in to offer that help. And so we decided we need a new vision for the RU, a new charter that anytime there is a crisis anywhere in the world, we will work with the UN bodies in Geneva, whether it be the UN World Food Program, UNHCR, which looks after refugees, and then work with our national members to say, how do we bring aid where aid is needed, and how do we then become more resilient so that the moment that change happens, the moment that crisis happens, we're there to help. Let me go through what I consider our 3D challenges. The first challenge is drivers. If you want to get something from here to there, until we get to autonomous vehicles, and I'll touch on that in a second, you need drivers. We have a huge crisis today in our industry, like other industries that are missing employees, but we have a huge problem globally. We did a survey last year looking at only 36 countries. One of the biggest problems we see is that 1/3 of our drivers are over 55 years old. So you do the math, pretty soon they'll be retiring. The average age of a driver today is 47 years old. So young by my standards, but old in terms of how long they'll be in the industry. We did a survey in these 36 countries, and we saw that globally speaking, there are 3 million drivers missing. Between now and 2028, we predict that there will be 7 million drivers missing globally. Now that's only in the 36 countries. If you extrapolate from that and do the mathematics, you can actually get to a figure of about 12 million drivers missing. If you don't have drivers, those vehicles won't move. They'll just sit there. And that means our economy will stop. So this is a huge, huge crisis in our industry. So we have to see, how do we get people into the profession? Well, it's not as easy as you might think. If we look at Lithuania particularly, we have a shortage of 12% in terms of what the demand is, and by 2028 we could increase that to 18%, which is above the EU average, which will be 17%. Of course, we need to attract youth into the industry, and we need to attract women into the industry. 6% of truck drivers in the world are women. Here you lag behind. I love to say that Lithuania is a leader in so many aspects, but here you're really lagging behind. Lithuania, you have 0.5% of your drivers are women. I see a lot of women in the audience. You're not driving vehicles, are you? You're driving your cars, you're driving your e-bikes, whatever, but you're not driving trucks. Join the profession. You'll absolutely love it. Where you are leaders is in youth. You have 10.9% of your truck drivers are under 25, so bravo for that. The EU average is 4.8, so at least you're bringing the youth in, so that's extremely, extremely good news. But innovation will be key. When I talk to my sons who are 24 and 25, this is how they talk. They talk through this thing here. You have to be innovative, and in terms of our drivers, we have to show how the industry is exciting, how it is innovative. And unless you can create that excitement of innovation and importance, you won't get them in. For women, well, we have another issue. Women, come join the profession, and you're going to hang out with a bunch of guys at a parking area when you have to stop for social regulations, except we have one little problem. There are only 300,000 parking areas in the EU. We need another 100,000 to actually meet demand. And out of those 300,000, only 7,000 are registered as being secure, have actually been certified. So it's pretty tough for me to say, come join the profession, women, but then you're going to hang out with a whole bunch of guys at a parking lot. So that's something we need to work on seriously. And then, of course, I think the most fundamental thing in attracting people to the profession is recognizing the worth of that job. During the pandemic, our drivers were called heroes. I always knew they were heroes, but then finally some people started saying, these are the people that are bringing us our food. Despite us having to stay at home, we're still able to eat. They're bringing us our medicine. They're actually delivering all of the vaccines. They kept working while we were at home nice and comfortable. Again, whenever there's a crisis, they're the first ones there. They'll put their lives at risk to be able to make sure that we can enjoy the quality of life that we come to know. With this, we decided last year to give our Grand Prix d'honneur that we normally give to somebody who's created a very heroic act, and we gave the Grand Prix d'honneur of the RU to all drivers for their heroism, and every day they step into one of those commercial vehicles. So we need to recognize them for what they are, heroes. So do join the profession and we'll get you the secure parking. The other challenge we're facing, decarbonization. Most countries in the world, in fact some 140 of them, have set a target for 2050 to be at zero carbon emissions. China, Saudi Arabia have said 2060, but then a number that also said we'll be at a certain level in 2030, 2040, including in the EU. Also plans to phase out internal combustion engines. In doing that, I would argue that you're going to then create 40% unemployment in the constructors industry, because 40% employment is to make the motor. So if we're saying, as we were talking earlier about China, that China's making these vehicles, we buy the batteries, put the battery in the vehicle, so you're creating jobs in China, but you're not creating jobs in Europe. So to be seen how we actually get. I think the smarter thing is let's put clean fuel and alternative fuels in the combustion engines we already have. We need to demonstrate how sustainability equals profitability. When I joined the RU a long time ago, yes, you heard 1995, the first thing I did in 1996 was I had the membership sign what we call the Charter for Sustainable Development. And how I did that was to tell the transport industry, by the way, when you're trying to save fuel, you're saying that's for my pocket, but it actually has environmental impacts. So demonstrating that sustainability equals profitability is a way to get the industry to really back the whole idea of going carbon neutral. And it can be done, but we have to do it in very pragmatic ways. This Charter for Sustainable Development, we actually then put it into our Constitution, where I, as the RU Secretary General, have a constitutional obligation to drive towards sustainable development. We've now created at the RU what we call the Green Compact, which is a roadmap. How do we get from now to 2050 to become carbon neutral? Now, knowing that every region of the world is different. We're not just dealing with the EU, we're dealing with the entire world. And every country and every region has a different energy environment in terms of how you get from here to there. What we have to do, two phases. Firstly, looking at us, what we can do to reduce our energy consumption through efficiency measures, and then the tougher and more expensive role of how do we change our energy, what do we find in terms of hydrogen, e-fuels, et cetera, So it's both ways. But what I argue is that in 2050, there's not some magic button we push and then, oh, we're carbon neutral, hooray. No, it has to start today. And we have to put in place all the measures that allow us today to already reduce our carbon emissions. For example, and Marius knows my comment on this one very much, if we were to move to eco trucks, so we have a tractor with 2 trailers, we can reduce our carbon emissions today by 30%. And as I said at the ITF in Leipzig, which was not very much appreciated by the rail industry, but it's a true statement, are we here to decarbonize, to reduce our CO2 footprint, to save humanity, as we are told, because of climate change? If this is our objective, then we should do everything possible. Or are we here to save the railways? I'm sorry to say, but the reason we're blocking this is the railways are saying, no, this will cause unnecessary competition in the railways. I'm sorry, again, do we want to save the planet and human beings from global warming? Or do we want to save the railways? When you guys can tell me the answer to that, then we can act. But today we can reduce by 30%. It's not just that. We talked about border crossing earlier. We've seen that in Saudi Arabia, we can reduce our carbon emissions crossing the border by 90%, 90%, by putting in place the right instruments. We can reduce by 15% today by training our drivers, and reduce by 15% their energy consumption. And this then, when we go to other vehicles, whether they be electric vehicles or whatever, that training will help them to also make sure that we use less energy. All of this will be fundamental. Also, we have to never, ever forget, and it was mentioned by the EU speaker, that we have to look at public transport. Buses and coaches are the cheapest way to actually use the safest and most environmentally friendly mode of transport, and at 1/10 the cost to governments than putting in place something that goes on rails. The last challenge, digitalization. I go back to this thing here that my sons always communicate with me, and this is how they know I exist, is through the phone. This has changed radically how we live. When I remember as a kid when I saw Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I saw in the movie that they were talking to each other in space and looking at phones and said, that'll never happen in our lifetime. Little did we know that on our phone we can do absolutely everything today. The biggest challenge now we're looking at, and the biggest innovation, will be artificial intelligence. My son actually works at Microsoft in artificial intelligence, and he keeps saying to me, Papa, Papa, I mean, in such a disappointed way. You need to understand what it is, because we can say, oh, I've got this app. He said, yeah, that's an app. Artificial intelligence means it thinks for you. It replaces your brain. It actually does things smarter. And that's why we see that it'll have huge effects on our industry in terms of route optimization, vehicle maintenance, driver performance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the other thing is that AI will allow us to move more quickly towards automation. At the ITF, we produced a study some 5-6 years ago saying that by now we should have 30% of the fleets that are autonomous. The technology exists. We saw one just go by this morning. All the technology is there. It's a matter of how do we get everybody to buy into it, governments to accept it, laws to change. Again, the technology is there. We can do it. It will not only make us more efficient, it'll make us safer, knowing that 85% of accidents are caused by, anyone? Us. Us. So if you remove us, the cause of 85% of the accidents, and just have autonomous vehicles, yes, you'll still have accidents, but much less than the 85%. So the transition from here to there will be a tough transition, but we need to get that done. Lastly, border crossing. We talk about sustainable development. I don't see how we have the audacity to talk about sustainable development in this day and age, when we think sustainable development is economic development, social equity, environmental protection. Reality is, when we get to a border in many countries, our trucks don't wait a few hours. They wait days, even weeks, to get from one side to the other. And we talk about sustainable development, economic development, the trucks are blocked, the economy is blocked. Social equity, our drivers are held hostage. Environmental protection, are you kidding me? The trucks are just inching ahead, trying not to lose their spot. Burning fuel for nothing, when we can go right through from one side to the other, like we saw in Saudi Arabia, in 90% less time. We don't just need electronic CMR, we need e-CMR, e-tier, e-visas, e-permits, we need absolutely everything. On e-CMR, in terms of political will, e-CMR came into effect, the protocol, in 2008. Out of the 58 countries of the CMR convention that there's an e-CMR protocol, only 34 since 2008 are in the e-CMR protocol. In the EU, there are still 5 that have not signed the protocol. Are you kidding me? And we talk about digitalization. This is the basic thing. Every transport movement starts or ends by truck, so you need to have CMR. How can you have anything autonomous? The autonomous vehicle is not going to say, okay, I'm going to move, and by the way, I'm going to bring all these pieces of paper with me. Digital will be imperative if we want autonomy in our vehicles. Digital will be imperative if we want intermodal transport. 95% of all the information and all the documents is the same, so why don't we just have a platform that you put everything in once and then be able to talk to one another. How we do this, and this is how I will conclude, as my time is now up in road transport, we're always on time and we stop when we have to, is partnership. I developed a slogan at the RU when I was 5 years into the organization, inspired by Kofi Annan, who said, the only way we can achieve our sustainable goals is to work in public-private partnership. In fact, the RU has 75 years of public-private partnership with the UN, the longest public-private partnership in the history of the UN. It's only by working together, all of us with governments, us with our clients, and all other partners, will we achieve all of these goals. Resilience is a must. It's not a nice to have. And the only way we'll do it is through partnership and working together. Sorry that I took a few more seconds, and sorry for the paper. Thank you very much for your attention.
A big thank you goes to the speakers from this session. Now we have a coffee break, during which you can enjoy coffee, snacks, and visit the Forum's Innovation exhibition, which has significantly expanded this year. You will find exhibits both inside the Litexpo hall and outside near the entrance. After the break, the Forum presentations will continue in 2 parallel halls. In this hall, we have presentations from global innovators and how innovations can help build business resilience. In Hall B, we'll have a session on how digital transformation can contribute to enhancing business resilience. I would also like to remind you that the Transport Innovation Forum has its own app this year. By downloading it, you not only find all the information about our forum, but also you will be able to participate in a lottery for a chance to win a fantastic e-bike from Ries and Miller company, which you can check out in the exhibition area during the break. How to participate in lottery, you can see on the screen. We look forward to seeing you after the coffee break at 11 a.m. sharp.